We don't get a lot of people who've gone through the life experiences that you have had and come out so successful on the other end.
I was just a really disturbed youth who really had no path, who was looking up to these older friends of mine who were gang members, who were not, who were just violent people. This kid's an absolute menace to society. There's really not much rehabilitation he's gonna become a better criminal. You need to send him away for the rest of his life. And I'll tell you, Jeff, at that point, he was right. I really can't even tap into what that kid was doing. He was on a death road.
You left with the record. Now you start your own business. What kind of challenges having that record still attached to you? Even though your heart had changed, your past hadn't.
Because a lot of people are jaded towards people coming out of prison. I went to work with them and I just fell in love with what we did.
For the first time in your life, you get to be a hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Can you imagine that? Yeah, it just in my heart and in my mind, I'm like, man, this is it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Violin's GPS podcast. I am Jeff Jones. This podcast, we like to interview people from the trades, from restoration, HVAC, from plumbing, and we like to hear the stories. And so these are people who've been in the industry, have been in business, have built something special. And what we do is we talk through what that experience was like. What were the high highs? What were the low lows? And what were the most important lessons learned? And today I am very thrilled to have one of my best friends in the entire restoration industry, Mr. Willy Johnson, former owner, president, what your title was there, of Alpha Omega Restoration in Billings, Montana. So just to let everybody know, this is how Willy and I really first met. Was Alpha Omega showed up on a list of DKI companies for me to reach out and call because we were offering a special for some training classes to DKI. And it wasn't your name, it was your wife's name. It was Julie's name that was on there. And most of the time when I would call and leave a message, people don't call back because, I'm scumbag sales guy type stuff. But your wife was really nice. She was one of the few that would always call me back. And she would listen to the pitch and she'd be very polite and very nice and then always say, "Well, think about it." And then never buy. And that went on for good 3 years, I would say. And then one day you guys did call and say, "Let's have a conversation." We did. We had a great conversation. You guys ended up coming on board as clients. And shortly thereafter, my wife is very, very introverted. We would take the same trip every year to Captiva Island, Florida, off the coast of Fort Myers. And it was a work trip where we do the planning retreats. But she would come down a couple days early because if her and I are there together during the work stuff, we don't get to spend any time together. So she'd come down a couple days early, just her and I, and we'd hang out there on my own dime. Well, that particular year, we pull in about 4 days before the event, lugging all our stuff up to the second floor because there's no first floor in any of those buildings. And out pops you and Julie from the room right next to us. And this is a 2 mile and a half long resort. You guys happen to be staying in the room right next to us. We just talk real briefly. Where you guys going? You said, "Yeah, we're thinking about going to get something to eat." And this idea pops in my head. And I'm like, "Oh, tell you what, hey, can we join you? We're starving too. We'll head down to the point, grab something to eat, my treat." And you guys were gracious, said, "Yeah, we'll meet you there." I walk in the room, and Willy, you should have seen the look that my very introverted, very excited to go sit on a beach for the next 5 hours and read a book and talk to nobody wife gave me when I walked into that room. And you know the look. You've seen her give me that look before. And we end up, well, the idea was, we're on our own dime. This is an island resort. So if I took you to dinner, that's entertainment of a client. I can expense that. Absolutely. I could save $100.
Heck yeah.
I thought it was brilliant. She did not. She was on the other side of that coin. But we ended up going, having lunch. Her and Julie hit it off. We all became great friends. And after that, we spent many, many times, whether it was at an RIA event or a Violand event. And we got to learn what the hot Florida sun does to your head when we're driving around in Southwest Florida in a convertible, you and I together. Very handsome couple we were. So it was a great time. Thank you very much. Long story long. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
That's not really how I remember it, Jeff.
That was,
just so you know, I mean, it was kind of like, I need you guys to go to lunch with me because I have to get a business expense. And I'm like, I
Was
don't
it
even
that way?
know who you, yeah, I don't know who you are, but okay, if you're buying my lunch, whatever.
Well, that is not how I explained it to my wife,
Yeah,
but
well, it worked out.
it worked out in the end.
Yeah.
So,
Now we're kind
now
of like soul twins, kind of like, like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. We're
you
kind of
make
like
a
twins.
great Danny DeVito, my friend. You really do.
Thank you. Thank you. Always
If
admired him.
you've ever seen Willie in real life, he's a good sized man. He's got the bald head. He's got the tattoos. It doesn't remind me a lot of Danny DeVito, but if that's where you're going with that, I'll be your Arnold. That's
Go
okay.
with it. I'll be here, Arnold. I like that. Excellent.
Well, buddy, let's jump right into this. And the reason I wanted to have you on here is because you've got a really unique life story that you shared with me as we were rolling around in that convertible, and I had no idea. And we don't get a lot of people who've gone through the life experiences that you have had and come out so successful on the other end with such a good outlook in life and a great family and built an incredible business. And we want to talk through exactly what happened there. So you can be as open with this as you want to be, your call. But it's an amazing story that I think needs to be told. So as I understand it, you had a pretty rough childhood growing up. You made some bad decisions. Do you want to sort of talk through exactly what that was and what that looked like?
Yeah, that's a good place to start, I suppose.
Tell me about your childhood, Willie.
Yeah, let's talk about your ACE score, Jeff. Adverse childhood experience. Um, okay, so really, um, I would say, well, at the age of 15, I got charged with a double homicide and then put into a maximum security facility until I was the age of 21 to be released. So, um, yeah, that's kind of like the bomb drop on it right there. Now, I guess we need to peel the onion back a little bit and talk about how does a guy get there at the age of 15, right?
Yeah.
So, keep these kind of short scenarios. We're all a product of our environments. We have our parents, or we don't have our parents. We have our uncles, we have our aunts, we have adoption agencies, whatever. I was lucky enough to have both of my folks. Had a mom who was a controlling, angry individual. Had a dad who worked to stay away from her, and who also had some pretty good anger issues. So those traits naturally, I absorbed them, I embraced them, and I loved them. That's just who I became. And it started very young, obviously. Whenever you're 12, 13, you're starting to develop into that young man. And I remember starting stuff on the schoolyard when I was in third grade. It just didn't make any sense. Looking back, you can reflect on that stuff. So like someone just pushes you, whatever. Like, the tough guy on the playground. I'm like, well, obviously I'm going to be tougher than you, so let's just go. These are like third graders, whatever. I remember choking out my very best friend because I broke my arm and I had a cast, and I'm like, I'm going to kill you, dude. It was like
Wow.
second grade. Who does
Yeah.
that, right? And we were
Yeah.
still good friends. It was fine. Yeah. So, anyway, born in California, moved over to Oregon, got involved with 13, 14, got involved with the neighborhood gang system that was running around causing problems.
In
So
Oregon.
that's, yeah, in Oregon, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had family members who'd already belonged to gangs as young members. So,
Okay.
and it just kind of fit in with my mischief and my anger issues. I'm like, well, normal people don't really want to scrap. They don't really want to fight. They're just going to school, doing other things. But if you belong to a gang, now we got some people who want to engage in that. Even your own people, your own crew's like, all right, well, who's toughest in the room? Let's just start fighting. It's like,
Wow.
who does that stuff, man? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So really, that was the lifestyle that I chose. I just jumped into that. That gave me, weirdly enough, it gave me a little respect. It gave me some authority, and it definitely provided the lifestyle that I was looking for. And I mean, loosely, like, what's a 14-year-old lifestyle looking for? What's he looking for? Ignorance is bliss with this kind of things. And hindsight's 2020. I was super just a really disturbed youth who really had no path, who was looking up to these older friends of mine who were gang members, who were not, who were just violent people. And I just wanted to be loved by those guys. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be accepted, and I wanted to be called part of their group.
Is that just maybe from not feeling that growing up as a kid at home and just trying to find a acceptance somewhere?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think the real issue was it was a really good place for me to release my violence, like my anger, my temper. I couldn't do that in school. I couldn't do that. Like I could do that out in front of the house and stuff with just neighborhood friends, but then we're kind of friends after that, you know.
How much were you even going to school at that point?
I made I made it through my ninth grade. No, I didn't quite make it through my ninth grade year.
Yeah.
There was some because of some gang rivalry stuff that we had going on. They were coming to our high school, and it was ugly.
Mhm.
So because I presented a threat, and these are big schools. I mean, I don't know, we probably had 2,000 people in our high school, but because I was drumming up the drum beat with violence. They're like, you are putting our staff in danger, so you need to, we're going to dismiss you from high school, put you in some, oh, I don't even know what, a secondary school where the troubled kids go. And then, true to gang lifestyle, those guys found out where I was, so they'd come over there and try to do stuff. And then finally, they just dismissed me from schooling altogether, which was a win. I love that. That was perfect. I didn't have to go back to school. I got a job working with my homies over at the local car wash, selling some drugs, just hanging out, doing our thing. But that ultimately led to just an immersion with those guys. I never left home, nothing like that. Went home at nights sometimes and did the family thing. I had a lot of respect for my dad. I love my dad deeply. He just died 2 Decembers ago. And I had the luxury to bring him into my house, serve him for his last few years, and just be with him as he passed on. And that I just super grateful for that. But my mom, um, she did not like him. I
Oh,
don't know, it was crazy. But it's her own issues. But anyways, I would go home, but just for my dad,
okay.
because I love my dad's loyalty, and I mean, he just hung out with this woman forever. And she was super abusive to him, like,
Mm.
to the hospital you go this time, Dad. I'm gonna. Well, yeah, we're packing up my clothes again because I gotta get out,
Yeah.
before your mom shoots me in the head. So yeah, that was a little awkward.
So that,
So that's
yeah.
but I stayed away from that, and then I got more immersed in hanging out with those guys. And really, I think at the end of the day, that led up pretty. I already had some charges. I had already been in the justice system with stealing stuff and assaults and stuff like that.
They became your family, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Until they weren't. Really, we had a big incident happen, and I didn't feel like my gang family, stepped up to where I wanted to go blow some houses up and stuff, and like blow like everything. Yeah, I wanted some like C4, and they just weren't down for that kind of stuff. I just didn't get. I don't know why.
So you almost became too much for them.
Well, in my own mind, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
They were just, they wanted to get high and just cause some trouble, and I was just looking for all trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that point, shoot, and the reason why I wanted to go blow everything up is one of the rival gangs. I had ended up with like 50 stitches from a baseball bat in my face. So we had this riot. There was like 5-on-5. All the cars were destroyed. I ended up in the emergency room with, the damaged brain cells, concussions, and all, whatever.
Jeez.
Oh, so I can't remember that stuff, huh?
Well, you look good, buddy. You look
Yeah,
good. You
thanks, man.
healed.
Yeah, yeah. So, at any rate, but because of that incident, that's what made me go rogue. I thought that I needed to solve and deal with these people myself because my gang, my set wasn't really willing to step up. So I'm like, well, I can deal with this myself, and I just went off the rails. Truthfully, like I don't even to get back to that where that mind frame was. I really can't even tap into what that kid was doing because he was on a death road.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to Violin's GPS podcast. I hope you're discovering valuable insights and practical wisdom to guide you on your journey. The 2025 Violin Executive Summit will take place on June 23rd and 24th in Canton, Ohio. This event features 12 advanced business courses to choose from, covering topics such as performance management, artificial intelligence, digital marketing, results driven selling, business financials, and much more. combining collegiate and real-world education from world-class instructors, all customized to small businesses in the trades. It's also a fantastic opportunity to network with inspiring professionals like those featured on the GPS podcast. Don't miss out. Register today at violan.com or use the links provided on the screen or in the description. Now, let's get back to our show. Was that all unable to process the anger and the feelings and the emotion? Was there any sort of substance abuse going on with that? How do you get to that point of the right answer here is to blow something up?
Well, that'd make everybody feel better, right? When you get to blow something up. In theory, right. No, I wasn't really, I did not like feeling out of my normal mindsets.
Okay.
So I just didn't really dig the drugs. Yeah. Tried a few this and that, did that. And, but it never took. I can't imagine what would happen to me if it would have took, because that would have been a whole different.
That's a
We
good
work
point.
with guys now that have serious addictions, and that's in their guts and their DNA, and it's just very difficult. I would much rather work with a guy dealing with an anger issue, because I feel like I have those answers, than a guy dealing with, I can't stop shooting up meth because I can't figure it out. I'm just like, man, this is so different and so much more into your DNA. I don't know. Working through that, I'm trying to learn about that, but
Sure.
yeah. So that really led up to me taking these actions in my own hands. And that evening that the major scene went down, I was out of sorts with just I was looking for problems, and then didn't really care who came across those problems really. So got into an altercation, and then shots were fired, and that's exactly what happened. I just unloaded on this large group that was what I thought were my enemies. So fast forward throughout, they had I got a waiver. They call this a waiver to an adult court, so it's an arraignment. And they said, you've acted like an adult in this, so now you need to be charged and sentenced like an adult. So I went into the adult court system, um, which I tell you that because that's why I'm still on record. Like, my record is still viable today. You can't get rid of that stuff. Had I been a juvenile, that stuff would have all stayed under the map, right?
Okay.
Everybody, you can't see that stuff. But at any rate, they did that, went to a jury trial. It was a long process. They found me guilty of some different lesser charges. My defense team, all state appointed, they played a defense mechanism. Like, I really didn't have kind of a choice, and I really wasn't this bad guy running around. Yeah, it was obviously they knew what they were doing with that stuff.
What's that like to be in a courtroom though, where your life is in the balance? Your freedom, you could gotten a lot worse than you got. What's that like,
Oh,
just sitting there listening to two complete strangers argue about the rest of your life?
well, yeah. Remember, I think at that point I'd sat in between county jails and in isolation for probably a year almost. So I had a lot of time to think about what the heck was even happening, but it didn't really register, Jeff. I mean, I was
Were you
still,
just too far gone at that point?
well, I just didn't. I mean, think about when you were 15. I mean, and think about now, right?
Yeah.
Did you really connect the wires, and did you really put the puzzle pieces where they belong?
I can barely do that now, buddy. There was
I
no
know. That's
chance
what
of
I'm
doing that
saying.
at
You know
15.
that's the truth. I
Yeah.
don't know. So it really wasn't connecting then either. I was like, man, I just can't wait to get out of this. Let me back out. Let me go run around. That was not, yeah. I think midway through, somewhere in the court hearings, there was a plea agreement. Not from my standpoint, but from the district attorney said, listen, if you take this charge on these charges, we just give you 20 years with a good chance of parole in like 10. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And that was like, we were riding in the elevator. I'm all shackled up and stuff. And I'm like, my attorneys were like, I can't tell you to take it. You know, I think we got a good chance of winning some of this stuff. And I'm just like, 20 years in prison? I should be, truthfully, Jeff, right now, I should be coming up for parole. Like, if they kept me in adult court, that's that's the sentence that judge would have given me. That judge was hot.
Wow.
So I didn't take that bargain. I finished the whole thing. The jury came back. They took me back into juvenile court, and then I went to a maximum security facility for teen killers, where 25 of us resided. and did to my 21st birthday. That's when they let me out. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. During that time is where we had some professional doctors come in, and they took me aside, and they one of the doctors that came in had testified against me in my court hearing.
Oh, that
He's
couldn't have
like,
been easy,
well, yeah, no, the whole thing was a train wreck, man. This guy
especially where
said,
you were mentally at that point.
this guy said, this kid's an absolute menace to society. There's really not much rehabilitation he's gonna become a better criminal. You need to send him away for the rest of his life. And they have the ticket because you have a homicide charge to get rid of this guy out of society. And I'll tell you, Jeff, at that point, he was right. So
And
fast
that's
forward a
who they
few
sent
years.
to rehabilitate you, was the guy who said you can't be
That's
rehabilitated.
exactly. This
Wow.
guy walks in, and I'm like, you should have seen. I think I went ghost white, man. Yeah, I'm like,
I
what's
imagine the
this guy?
violence in you had to come back internally
I'm
there
like,
pretty
yeah, I better
pretty
jump up
quickly.
and take care of this guy real
Yeah.
quick.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, so he started a violent offender group, and all of my lies, all of my deceit, he was one of the few souls that could see through me.
Hmm.
And I am just eternally grateful for that guy, because I would have not, I mean, he had a special talent to call a spade when no one else could see that. I stopped fighting on the yard. I stopped doing everything I did because I just wanted to do good time. And you don't want to spend all that time in the whole solitary confinement, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that'll drive you nuts. So I had enough reason to be like, well, if you stop punching people in the face for just looking at you wrong, you can stay out and play basketball this afternoon, Like, okay.
Did you ask him, like, all right, doc, level with me here. Why did you sit in a courtroom and tell him to put me away for the rest of my life? But now all of a sudden you're here showing some sort of empathy or compassion or interest in me when it seems like very few other people are willing to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we had that conversation.
Okay.
I think it may have been just a moment. There was 3 or 4 high profile cases that came through, Jeff. I was one high profile case. There was some other guys that had done some other pretty gnarly things too. And I think he maybe had saw this opportunity to come in and maybe like give us a chance. Like, you guys are all going to get out
You weren't in
clean.
with like the Menendez brothers or something, were you?
That's uh, not with
They're,
those guys specifically.
I think they're a little older than you if
They're a little
I'm
older.
doing the
That's
math.
right.
Okay.
That's
All
right.
right.
But plenty of other, yeah, right. And so I think he saw hope.
Okay.
Um, and it wasn't just me that was involved with this guy. So I think the hope and he came in, and it took time, bro. It took some time to, um, just to be honest. Like, we lied. I lied so much about being the victim of this whole circumstance that I believed it in my guts. I was not the monster that those guys had made me out to. You just start believing those lies.
Hmm.
I could tell myself I'm a freaking runner all the time, like and just, I could just tell people that I believe it. Right?
Yep.
I kind
That's
of
what
have
I do. That's what
I
got
do
me
have
through
the
all those
runners.
marathons.
Well, and you got the power lifter physique. I got the runner's physique. So
That's
people would
right.
believe it, right?
Well, that's what made us Arnold and Danny.
That's right. So the guy comes in, and really just peels back the onion. And I do believe that, and we're talking about my faith here in a second, but I believe God he was already working in my heart. You got like, he was doing something to get me ready to break. I just needed someone who believed in me and would call my bullshit out and say, all right, that's got to be a lie. Like, where's this monster at that did this damage? We need to get to him. Let's get to him. So, and he was able to do that. And there was several other people that came into my life that were just super instrumental in that time, that I learned to trust and believe in, that these people they had my best at their heart. So,
I'm gonna assume growing up, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but growing up the way you did in and around the gangs and everything, that religion wasn't a part of that. Or was it there, but it wasn't a central theme? How did that faith and that, like, hey, I think God's changing something in me, and I think I'm a better person than maybe I think I am, or can be a better person. How did that grow or come into your life?
yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. If there was faith from that I had seen as a young individual, it was and I'm probably going to offend all kinds of Christians out there, but there was some crazy stuff that my mom had been involved with, and it was hypocrisy at its finest. So there wasn't a real heart change that had happened. So I really was turned off. Like it was a bad deal. Like
Mhm.
you say this stuff, but then you do this stuff, and it was like that's crazy stuff. So not really. If anything, it was to keep that away from me. So yeah, so really the my faith involvement came maybe I only had a few years left of time left, but during some of my therapy stuff, once I got figured out like who I was, who I was, and what I was doing on this earth, and the real damage that I had occurred that I did, and that took some pretty special stuff because I couldn't feel anything. Like there was,
No
it took
remorse.
a, it no remorse. Yeah, I
Wow.
didn't even.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
None whatsoever.
That's hard. I mean, and right now looking back at it at that no remorse period of your life has got to be just crazy
That's
to think through and be like, okay, how'd that happen?
I think
Wow.
this is the right. That's the right thing
Yeah.
because it's mind blowing that
Yeah.
because me today, I feel deeply. I care deeply. I love people, and I love to be loved well, and I love to have good conversations, not just surface conversations. I like to understand where people are with their faith, with their families, and I mean, I didn't want any of that stuff, right? But I think that's why that turned me into this person, right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it was maybe a few years before I got out that I had said, okay, my way's not, after I got healthy, we're just going to call it healthy in my mind and in my heart. I understood that I had created some of the worst circumstances on this earth for some families, probably hundreds of people, right? Um, and what's next for me? How do I figure this out? I'm going to go through life as a murderer. I'm going to go through life with this backpack of guilt on me. How do I deal with that? What am I going to be like? Am I going to turn to drugs when I get out to cover all this pain up now? Not because I'm a monster, but because I have all these families that
You
I
got to
just,
self medicate at some point.
that's exactly right. That's what
Yeah.
I was, yeah, all those kind of thoughts were happening. Really, at some junction, I did have a friend introduce me to the Christian faith. And the real difference in the Christian faith versus some of the other religions was this dude named Jesus. And I'm not going to give you the gospel right now because even though I want to, but there was a big difference, my man, in what Jesus was doing and what a lot of the other religions were doing. And at the end of the day, to synopsis that whole faith picture, there was nothing I could do to earn to be right with God.
Okay.
Like all the other religions, you got to do stuff. Like you need to live a good life. You need to perform this and you need to perform that. I couldn't do that, dude. I shit the bed, right? Like it was done.
Mhm.
And so this whole Jesus movement guy was like, "Come as you are, dude. This is good stuff. I can deal with that." And then he did this whole wackadoodle thing. He washed the feet. Like these guys were walking in their bare feet and their sandals, and there, it was just nasty. He washed the feet of these people that he was caring for, who was following him. You ever wash someone's dirty feet, dude?
I don't even like washing my feet.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't even like to bend down and wash my feet.
That's a young man's game, Willie.
That's right. Yeah. But for real, you think about that analogy, and that kind of turned me. That started turning my wheels. Like, if this guy it represents this kind of world, this kind of leadership, that's what I want. I want to lead that way.
Registration for the 2025 Restoration Industry Association Convention and Expo in West Palm Beach, April 28th through the 30th. The numbers, folks, are blowing up. This thing sold out last year. It's going to be even bigger this year. Register for the convention now. And if you're not a member, it's time. So you talked about wanting to be loved deeply. You weren't able to find that at home the way that you needed it. You weren't able to find that in your friends and the gangs that you went to. So you end up going to prison and finding it there.
Great place to be, man.
That's crazy. So you turn 21 and they walk up to your cell one day and they said, good news, get
Good
out.
news. Time to roll.
So what happens there? I mean, you can't, you have no resume. Anything you put on the resume is not good. You don't have a lot of life skills. You shouldn't have any money, or at least not much money. What happens when you get out?
Yeah, well, in my case, they bought me a one-way plane ticket to Montana. Yeah,
Montana.
my folks had relocated like 3 years before I got out. They'd moved here. And so and they were kind of gypsies anyway. So I don't know how many homes we were in growing up. 20 maybe. When it was a lot. You got to outrun the debt collectors. Don't forget that. That's a pro tip. Get new phone numbers.
That's the advice people are coming to this podcast for, right there, Willie. Outrun the debt collectors.
Debt collectors and child support, you can outrun those guys. Just got to get new phone numbers, okay?
There it is. Hey.
Yeah, pro tip. So they were like that though. So they just uprooted one day and said, we're heading to Montana. And I truly think maybe they did that because they knew that I would be getting out and
get you away from everybody.
Yeah, I just go right back to maybe that lifestyle. And that's a real life issue with guys coming out of prison. They go back to their neighborhoods, and it's very difficult to say no to the old friends who you believe care for you. So, yeah, so that was it. Did that, ran here, flew out. I had like $600 because I worked in the kitchens and I worked in some little lattice factory thing, and I did these jobs that I was able to make like $1 a day, whatever. Hey, that's good wages back there, man.
So now we're out. We're back with mom and dad. You're a changed person. You're not even trying to rebuild a life. You're trying to build a life at this point. You're doing odd jobs. I'm sure it's very, very difficult to get a job, and we'll cover that here, I think, in a little bit. How did that point go from here of, boy, I'm just trying to survive and be a better man tomorrow than I am today, to Alpha Omega takes off?
Well, so this is winter time that I had got out in Montana. Mm-hmm. And if you're
good time to go to Montana. Good call.
Perfect time to go to Montana. I really had no idea, so I got a job in a lumber yard. And
an outdoor job in the winter in Montana.
I thought I was going to die. I'm like, this represents hell. Like I go back to prison because this is horrible, man. Like I had it made there, right? Get me out of this place. So I put in I gave him like 2 weeks notice. I'm like, I can't function out here, and I'm going to go take a job at Burger King because I know it's warm inside. And that lady was going to hire me at Burger King.
You're working the grill at that point where the fire is.
Eating some. It was warm. I'm down, dude.
I get it. All right.
Yeah. But another job came away right when I was getting out of the lumberyard. And it was a cabinet maker. So I had a little bit of woodworking experience from inside the joint there. So I started making cabinets. Yeah. And then that lasted a little bit. And then what happened was we had some friends that I had made here bounced to another job because he was like, I'm going to leave and I want you to take over this little position. It was just some furniture stuff. He ended up not leaving, and I'm like, I'm just being your bitch here. I'm running all your errands. What am I doing, man? I need something important, Mm-hmm. But then I had a friend, an acquaintance, who her folks owned a restoration company in this area, the local area. Yeah, and it's still running today. That's that company and I'm like, well, let me go check it out. I went to work with them, and I just fell in love with what we did. I fell in love with it. Really scratched my itch to help people. Okay. I had no idea what I was getting into.
So you were learning to love to help people, and restoration became a vehicle to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can't tell you how fulfilling it was to go in, to be able to go into someone's house at one of their worst times for probably their number one asset and be the man that helps them out with that. That was it was mind blowing to me. I'm like, you're going to pay me to do this? This is crazy.
Did you get pushback, or did homeowners not know about your past? Because I would assume a lot of them would say, no, that guy can't come in here.
Right. Yeah, no, we keep it under the radar. I mean, for years there, it was just under the radar. I was very transparent with the owners of the company and said, hey, this is my story, just so you guys know, but it'd be great if you gave me a chance. I'll show you we can win. So,
okay.
And it was.
Good on them. Good on them. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, it was. Yeah, because a lot of people are jaded towards people coming out of prison, for sure. And they're just like, yeah, we're taking a pass on that.
Especially in that role where you're going into somebody's house. That's where it becomes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So you're going in and Mrs. Johnson, well, I can't say Mrs. Johnson because you're married to Mrs. Johnson. So I'll say Mrs. Smith's living room is, the dishwasher flooded and took out the first floor, and you're going in there, and for the first time in your life, you get to be a hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Can
Okay.
you imagine that? Yeah. It just in my heart and in my mind, I'm like, man, this is it. I don't even know how we're going to make money doing this, but I love this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I stayed there for a few years. And then we just, the owner's brother and I packed up and we went it was Hurricane Katrina had just happened. And he was like, I think this is a great opportunity. You should go and just check this stuff out. Let's go hang out in New Orleans for a year and go make a difference down there. And I'm like, I'm in. Let's go, man. Julie's like, don't do this, please. Now we got to do this.
I got to do this.
Yeah, right. So we spent about a year down there. Um, had some good contracts, met some really good people, did a lot of hard work, a lot of long days. I learned a ton. It was great. It was great. It's a super great experience. And then we came back there, and then I opened up. I didn't go back to the other restoration company. I thought I wanted to do like remodeling at that point, so I did. I opened up a little ditty out of my garage, and I was doing some remodel, doing kitchens and bathrooms, and what I realized along that road is the gratitude for me being in people's houses wasn't as high as it was if they had a disaster.
Ah, yes,
Yeah.
that makes
So
sense. You're not catching
I
them at their
become
lowest low.
exactly. I become a family physician instead of an emergency room doctor, right?
Ah, wow, I didn't think about that. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I just didn't love it. I didn't love it. So yeah, State Farm had actually called us up at that point and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do some fire stuff for us?" Because yeah, and I said, "Yeah, let's just get the fire thing going because we were already remodeling. I had all that stuff kind of running. It was just me. Julie was still working part time. We had a little girl at that point, so she was working part time, being a mom, and I was trying to figure out how to run a business and all that stuff. So it was just complete train wreck.
So growing up sort of a loner,
Yep.
somebody that didn't play well with others, we'll say.
Yeah.
And now you're starting a business where you've got to bring on employees and be a manager, be a leader, be a good communicator, maybe have a little bit of empathy, have a lot of these things that weren't a natural part that you weren't nurtured with a lot growing up. What was that like early on when you started hiring employees and having to manage somebody that may talk back or may show up late or may not care as much as you do?
Well, I believe in a good old fashioned throat punch, Jeff. No, I'm just kidding. We
You
don't do
can't
that
say
anymore.
that, buddy. You can't say that. Being recorded. That's the whole point of a podcast.
That's well, remember, I had already underwent a massive heart transplant. Okay,
Mhm.
inside. So
Figuratively.
when I came out, we had totally different rules. It was a whole new life. It was a whole new lens I was looking at through different glasses, man. The rose-colored glasses were gone. So I was doing my best to be the example that I was learning about in this whole Jesus dude. I was
Mhm.
trying to be that kind of a guy to my employees and to my friends. I just wanted to be, I want to wash their feet kind of guys,
Setting the
even
bar
though
pretty high there, bud.
I know,
There's usually a
I
few
know, right?
steps that people try to. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but
You
I never
said,
did
no, no,
wash
no,
their
no.
feet.
I'm
I
going
never
up
did
there.
wash their feet, just so you
Okay. Yeah,
know.
you never washed mine. You never
No,
even brought it up.
I'm probably not gonna.
Okay.
But yeah, I wanted to love them, and I wanted to be authentic with them, and just be honest. And I think just some of them traits that I had learned, those were huge, man. Those are huge. People love that when they are heard and they are respected. What else do you need?
When you started the business and you started hiring on employees and thinking, okay, well, someday hopefully Julie can come over here full time and we can build a business, we can build this family. Was that the vision on day one? Was I'm going to create something big and bold and beautiful? Or was it, I just want to help the next person? Like, where was your
Oh,
mind at that point?
that's great right there. That's the money right there, man. I couldn't wait to get the next call to
Hmm.
see how we're gonna just elevate this customer and make this problem go away for them. That's what I wanted. That was it right there.
So the growth of the business almost just became a byproduct. of the
That's
desire to
exactly
help
right. Yeah.
somebody and hiring people. Were you immediately comfortable in that role as a manager and
Yeah.
setting expectations and
Yep.
discipline and accountability and communication?
Well, that's a long list of come on now, buddy. I think I was
Maybe one
comfortable
more than the
being
other.
let's try, I think I was comfortable being an honest, transparent leader and a friend more than
Mhm.
anything. Like so I think some of those attributes you mentioned come out in friendships if you're authentic. So um yeah, I had to learn how to be a boss though. Like there's a lot of learning that happened through that. My goodness. I'm still learning how to be that kind of person in the community. I'm just like, gosh, why don't you guys just all be friends now, you know?
I think they call that learning the things a man my age should already know.
I agree with that. That's right.
That's not mine. That comes from a song. But yeah,
Ah,
I'm not that poetic. But so you mentioned earlier you didn't go to juvie. You went to big boy jail, which meant you left with the record. Now you start your own business. What kind of challenges having that record still attached to you, even though your heart had changed, your past hadn't? What kind of difficulty was there any that came along because of the baggage with that?
yeah, so that back in the day when State Farm invited us on, they had no idea about my record. So I was very transparent with them, like, all right, this is great, but just so you guys know, like this happened here a few years ago. And they were surprisingly okay with that.
Really?
They were
Okay.
like, okay, you know,
They
we
were in
we
desperate need of contractors.
that's all it was. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. They're like, geez, what are we gonna do in this area, right? So desperation spoke and we signed up. Um, but we didn't wear this out. Like we didn't tell people about this. This wasn't, my close friends knew about it. If someone I got close to, I certainly would disclose something because if people want to know what's the difference of Willie, why is he, why is he, how is he able to run a business? How is he able to do this? Well, it's not just me, right? Like number one, I got an amazing wife who's pretty smart. But two, I got a transformative God who changed my heart. So there's some stuff that just Willie just kind of like happened into here.
Well, I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to turn this into a two-part episode
Oh
because your
shit.
story is really good. So I think we started at the top and went down the roller coaster, and now we're starting to creak our way back up because it does turn out in the end pretty good for you, I think. So we're going to come right back here with part two
Okay.
and keep your conversation going. So thanks you everybody for listening to this episode of the Violins GPS podcast with my friend Willy Johnson, former, was it president, owner? What's the title?
I had janitor.
Janitor, Grand
Thank
Poobah and janitor of Alpha Omega
you.
Restoration. Thanks, Willy, and we'll see you soon.